Alright, in the last video, we covered the data validation, which keeps stopping us from inserting the data. Let's say if it's empty, it says required, and if we put less than 10 characters, it stops. But in this video, we're going to cover the part which actually takes the valid data and inserts into the database using Ajax. Let's go to the backend and check it out. Okay, so last video we finished exactly right here. This is where the validation function ended. And once the validation was successful, that's when we used this submit handler and called in this function right here, which is our real Ajax function, which will insert the data. But one interesting thing to notice here is that this event, I'm passing this event and collecting right here with e.target.dataset.key. So initially what I thought was here the e.target might be this button right here, right? But then with further investigation, found out that this is actually coming from this validate method right here, which is coming from this jQuery validation library, right? So what they're doing here is that they're actually sending the form. So basically, when I say e.target, it means the whole form. So once I found that out, I actually used this form and added the data key right here, which you saw in the UI UX JavaScript video. Just to refresh your memory, let's go back. Let's go here. And this is the reason this last line got added. I collected the form and added the custom key that I made. I attached it to the form so that when it comes to the Ajax, when the modal is open, I can just go there and collect this data key with this e.target. And here's something to mention, that I actually found jQuery to be a little bit buggy here because when I used this jQuery e.target.data and the way jQuery handles it, I did not get the right result. So I had to fall back on regular vanilla JavaScript. And this is how they collect the data set or data attribute result, and collected the flag key, the unique key here. And with that key, then I went ahead and queried the IndexedDB database and created this data set. If you look up here, we declared all these global variables, and this is where they're getting filled in. Just to show you where I'm getting this from, let's go into the application and IndexedDB, and this is where I'm getting this data. This flag key is being used, and according to this flag key, this object gets dug up, and then from here I'm getting the email and the ID, and thus this variable is being populated. And the content, on the other hand, is just coming from this text area right here, just getting the value from this one. And this flag title, I'm just making one up using the list ID. Just to show you one of the results, when we go to the flag custom post type, and this is the title. This is the title, the flagged list ID, and then the list ID. And this is where this is being made, right? So I'm just preparing this data set so that I can send them to Ajax, which is coming up. By the way, once this data set is built, I'm creating another object, flagged list, the same object, but with only the disable flag to true. If you look here we see all the disabled are false, right? But let's say if we pick one up, this one, which is 373, we already have 373, watch what happens when we really send some data. Flag it now. All right, now it just inserted the data and disabled this button right here. And if we refresh our IndexedDB, keep an eye out here, this is still false, and then once we refresh, 373, now it's true. And this is where it's happening, because by now we've already started our Ajax process, collect the data, and then create the object, because this time we're ready to insert it back in. Here we're creating the data object that we are about to send to the Ajax function. And here, for the first time, we're going to use this variable right here, this .ajax URL. To find this one, let's go up right here. Now the question is where this is coming from and what is self-list data. Just to quickly show you, this is basically a global variable created by using WordPress localize function. To find this out, we have to go all the way to our functions folder and go to script setup. Right here, it's our CSS, and right here, this is our main JavaScript. This is where this script gets compiled and minified by GULP.JS, right? But what we're doing here, while we're onqueuing it, we're also using the same ID and using this WP localize script function. And this is where we're declaring a global variable or global object here. This is basically an object. And under this object, we can have an array of all sorts of global variables. For example, root URL using get site URL, Ajax using admin URL, which is admin ajax.php, and the nonce for WP REST. So anytime we need these variables, we can just call it up using self-list data dot root URL dot Ajax URL, etc. So now you know where this guy is coming from. Now let's go back to the Ajax. So right here, we're using post method, and in the data variable, we're sending this .ajax function, and this is the PHP function that will perform the actual data insertion and emailing people, etc. And this one is up here. We just manually set it up, gave it the name list flag Ajax, which is located inside this function folder, and then self list, and under Ajax, and right here list flag Ajax. Now we will cover this PHP function in the next video, so let's go see the rest of the Ajax. Okay, so in here we're sending this PHP function as an action, and this data object that we just created right here. And then once this function is fulfilled and successful, it comes back and we are console logging a success. If it fails, we're console logging this error message. But if it is successful, then we are using the set function for the IndexedDB, because at this point, once we know that Ajax is successful, now we're going to go ahead and update this variable to the IndexedDB, which comes from right here, and which is basically this guy right here, only this time the disabled property is set to true, thus this button becomes disabled. No matter how many times you click on it, it's not gonna do anything. Even when you refresh, it is still disabled. And this is how we are persisting this button status. And once this is updated, just console logging this, and I am refreshing the page so that the changes finally take place, the button actually shows up disabled. Now in the next video, I'm going to go ahead and cover what this PHP function actually is doing. Please stay tuned.